We're recording the interview of Jose Rafi Rodriguez. This interview is being conducted by Ericka Carter and Katie Bradshaw from the Wright State University Veterans Voices Project. This interview is being recorded at Wright State University in the New Media Incubator. It is 11:25 a.m. on October 7th, 2019. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Okay. Where and when were you born?
I was born on May 15th, 1955 in San Juan, Puerto Rico.
Who were your parents and what were their occupations?
My dad, who's deceased, Pedro Juan Rodriguez, he was a pharmaceutical rep, like a salesman for a pharmaceutical company. And my mom, she was also deceased, Estelita Samalot. And she was a teacher for the, back then it was called mentally retarded, kids with impediments. So those were my parents.
Did you have any siblings?
Yes, I have an older sister, Miriam Jimenez. She's a retired teacher, resides in New Jersey. My older brother, Pedro Rodriguez, he's an attorney in Puerto Rico. And I have a twin brother, Jose Angel Rodriguez. He has his own, he's a speaker and a motivational speaker, and he does workshops in Puerto Rico.
So you're the only person that stayed in Ohio or came to Ohio?
Well, actually, through the military, I ended up in Ohio, although I was stationed in Ohio at Wright Pat 3 different times. Okay. So Ohio seems to be attracting me for some reason.
All right. When did you first come to the continental U.S.?
Well, I came in, other than visiting when I was young with my parents, I joined the military got commissioned in February of 1978 and came on active duty the 31st of May of 1978, going through missile training at Vandenberg Air Force Base as a missile crew member. And from there, I had a follow-on assignment at the 321st Strategic Missile Squadron at A.F. Warren Air Force Base in Cheyenne, Wyoming.
Okay, that's a mouthful.
So I went from the tropics to cold country in Wyoming. That was a bit of a challenge, but I adjusted pretty well.
Okay, well, I still haven't adjusted. I'm from California, and I don't know that I've made this Ohio adjustment very well at all. But your parents, you said your dad was a pharmaceutical rep in Puerto Rico. What was that like?
Well, being the son of a sales rep, he was pretty busy, pretty engaged in social activities. He was a well-dressed professional. I remember that. I remember as a child shining his shoes, me and my twin brother shining his shoes because he had to go see doctors or what have you, pharmacist in his career. And he was a well-groomed individual, always representing the company, and always a great mentor and a great leader in the community as well. He was engaged in Lions Club and other things in the community, which I learned how to be engaged in the community, obviously with his love and support of my mom.
Okay. So your mom sounds like she had an incredible amount of patience just to deal in her line of work and then to have 4 children, right?
Yeah, well, not only patient, but she was a very gifted individual, not only with the gift of patience, but with the gift of love. I remember very vividly one time where mom came to the home kind of crying, and my twin brother and I said, "Mom, why are you crying?" She says, "Because I'm so blessed to have normal kids." And one of the things that she used to do every so often is to take us to her home visits with his kids that had mental challenges. I remember one time, I must have been like 9, 10 years old. She came to this home. And my mom was 4'11". She was not a tall lady. This a kid was like 6 foot, 250 pounds or bigger. He was a big boy with the mind of a 2 or 3 year old, but he was kind of violent. He was actually tied to a chair. And I was a little scared about that, but my mom said, "Don't worry about it." When they untied him, the kid came and gave my mom the biggest hug I ever seen. So he was very, very gifted. So that's where I learned about compassion for others, and that's reflected in the things I do right now in the community as well.
It had to be really helpful for you as an officer in the Air Force also.
Absolutely, having compassion, because there's always multiple sides to a story, and learning compassion. First of all, the sharpness of my dad, be at the top of the game, but also the compassion that came through my mom was pretty powerful in my Air Force career. Not only with the people that I served with, but my family and other friends in the community. Compassion is something that I wish we could see more, but I'm glad I was able to experience that through my mom.
Um, that's so touching, and it's so true that compassion is so important every day in everyone's lives. I just think that a smile, giving a smile to a stranger, can just go such a long way, whether you feel like smiling or not. So I definitely understand. Did any of your other siblings serve in the military?
Actually, no. They were kind of worried. Rafi, you leaving the nest, you go into the military, you may end up in harm's way and all that. Just be careful. And I remember one day when I received my orders, I had already graduated from college. I was waiting for the orders to come in to join the Air Force into active duty. And my mom was sitting right next to me when I got the letter. And I remember she asking, when I say, hey, Mom, I got the orders. I'm going out to Vandenberg for missile training, blah, blah, blah. And then she said, but you're coming back in 4 years, right? I said, no, Mom, this is my career. I will be gone for more time than that, but I'll come visit. And that's the name. That's hard.
Okay.
Because as a mother, letting a child go in the military, you go into an unknown. She said, that's what you want. Accept it. And I was very blessed to have parents that accepted that. You're going to do something bigger than yourself. Go do it and make us proud. So a little touchy subject, and that's one thing about Ohio is the allergies are pretty high here in Ohio. So sorry about that. It's just that's part of the family upbringing. As of now that I'm a parent, when do you let your kids go to fulfill their dreams and the things that will make them a valuable asset to society? That's really hard because we want to keep them close. But my mom was a very savvy and very endearing woman. She understood that I was born to be in the military, so she let me go. And what's really funny is the distance brought us closer than had I been in Puerto Rico, just staying with them, seeing them more often. But she understood what I was getting into, and she accepted it. That was pretty powerful.
That is really amazing. You mentioned that you told your mother you're going to be gone for more than 4 years. So you knew that this was going to be your career. Was that sight unseen? Like when I joined, I said, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna step out on this faith, but I don't know that I can sign my life away just yet.
I knew from early on when I was in college and I joined the Air Force out of D.C., this is the only thing I really wanted to do. And I did not see myself, you picture yourself, how do you see yourself in the military or as a professional, what have you. I never saw myself anything but you wearing the uniform and doing the mission at hand. So I knew I was going to be gone for quite a while. What I mean gone is doing a mission that was bigger than myself and doing something of meaning and purpose. And you don't do that just for a few years, and I was very, very committed, and I ended up spending 26 years in the military.
Why the Air Force?
Well, when I was in college, I looked at the Army ROTC program and I looked at the Air Force program, but because my liking I was more in rockets. I'm a kid of the space program. I watched that on TV, so I wanted to work with rockets. And through the missile career, I ended up working on space launch vehicles and launching satellites into space. The Air Force, to me, it was not even a job. It was an adventure, and I never worked a single day in the Air Force. It was all pure passion to wear the uniform and do what had to be done that day. And if I had to do it all over again, I'll do it exactly the same way.
Okay, now you're going to have my allergies acting up in a second. um, that seems amazing. What college did you go to?
I went to the University of Puerto Rico in Mayagüez. That's the Science and Technology Engineering School on the west side of the island. And we had an ROTC detachment there, and I ended up applying, and I got accepted, and ended up being the distinguished graduate of ROTC when it was my time to graduate. So.
Tell me about ROTC.
Oh, it was fun. I mean, I enjoy getting ready for the parades and doing the, learning the academics about the Air Force. Actually, my mentor, Rafael Ramos, who recently got deceased, he really taught me the ways. He showed me the ropes about the Air Force, and it was very powerful because I just enjoy the courses. I want to do that. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that group of men and women to do something that the average person will never get to do. And you probably heard where it's so true that only 1% or less of the American population ever, serves in the military, defending the other 99. I wanted to be part of that 1%. And ROTC was just a gateway for me to do that. So I really, really, really enjoyed ROTC.
I want to assume you had great grades in high school and was very active.
Absolutely.
Okay, what were some of the things you did in high school?
Well, in high school, I was president of the student council. I played volleyball and baseball, but I was very, very big in the leadership roles, whether, the student council and you class president and so forth. And then in college, then I ended up being the group commander eventually at the Air Force ROTC detachment. So leadership was pretty big, and community engagement. That was something I learned that from my dad. So I play sports here and there, but my forte was in leading groups and leading fellow Americans into accomplishing a mission, whatever the mission was that we had at hand.
So you're from Puerto Rico, and your history is rich there. Coming to America, and were there big culture differences for you? Were you anxious to share?
Well, there were a couple of things I had to adapt. When I spoke English since I was 5 years old, but it was actually my first assignment was in Vandenberg in California. I was tuning the ear to how English was spoken day to day by Americans versus what you were taught in school. So I had to really tune in my ears and get used to the acronyms in the military and some of the accents, whether they're from the north or the south or the east or the west. So that was something I had to adjust, and I think I have adjusted pretty well. I still have an accent, but I'm proud of it. It's like my signature. So. Other cultural things is how in America, we teach our children to be independent much sooner than in the Latino culture. We had a tendency to hold on to the kids a little longer and be, not that Americans are not supportive, but our support was extended over and over in America. Like I try to teach my children, you gotta be on your own feet, and you gotta show that you could do it on your own. We always you home team if we need to support you, but try to do it on your own. Food was a little different. More of the different tastes that are in America that we didn't have in Puerto Rico growing up. As a matter of fact, I had my first taco when I came to America. I'd never ate Mexican food in Puerto Rico. It was not that common. So my first taco was actually in California. Yeah, that was a treat. So that was quite unique. But yeah, there were some adjustments. But overall, the military gave me the boundaries on behavior and cultural acceptance to other people, not only from the United States but all over the world. Because I ended up working on international affairs and being compassionate and be able to work within those parameters was extremely good for me. Because the military taught me discipline and how to stay focused on your goals and your objectives. So I know that's a long answer to a question, but that's how I felt about coming to America. It was not that difficult to transition. A few things here and there in the language I had to get adjusted. Also, some of the things that I would say, I had to adjust my speaking ability because some words didn't come out quite right. But we could do that on a different interview. But it was actually relatively straightforward.
Okay. Can you tell me about ROTC? Is that like boot camp?
Well, yes and no, because we had to do some drills, but RTC was more about a combination of academics, where some of your courses that you had to take in your bachelor's curriculum were derived from the courses offered by the ROTC, whether leadership, history, things of that nature. And then we have the military drills and how to wear the uniform, how to run a parade, the different command structure. That was all part of the ROTC program, as well as coming to the States during the summer. It's called summer camp, where we would do more like a pseudo boot camp, but in a particular base. In my case, since I was going to be working on missiles, I ended up in a missile base, learning about the different Titan missiles back then. So I got acclimated to life as a missileer. So yeah, it was actually a combination of both, heavy in academics because they want you to be a good leader as an officer, not only in your professional career, but with the men and women that you'll be leading.
What's your favorite missile?
Well, actually, the missiles that, and this is something that you probably will tickle you, but the Titan missiles had a long history, and I ended up working with Minuteman missiles, were smaller but very powerful. In 1987, I had orders to go to Vandenberg Air Force Base to work on the shuttle program. I just recently got married in 1997. Well, unfortunately, the shuttle, blew up in 1997, so my orders were diverted to work on the Titan IV space launch vehicle out of Los Angeles Air Force Base in California. It was a fast-moving program, high visibility from the White House and Congress and all that. And we had a contract for 10 missions to launch satellites that were scheduled to fly on the shuttle, and they were Department of Defense and critical satellites. So we could not just wait 2 years until the shuttle was refurbished. So we bought with the contract for 10 missions, but we bought 12 space launch vehicles in case something happened. Well, we had, out of 10 missions, one didn't make it, so we ended up using one of the spares. The Titan IV that never flew is actually sitting on its side at the Air Force Museum. So I would encourage all those folks here close to the Dayton area to go visit the Air Force Museum on the presidential hangar, which is the newest hangar. And as you go through that hangar, on the immediate right is a big rocket sitting on its side. It's a Titan IV space launch vehicle, and I was one of the regional engineers in the cadre of engineers and contractors to build that rocket. And that, to me, has to be one of the highlights of my career. It also says how I am aging, because one of my programs is now at the museum, but I'm glad it's there.
I wouldn't feel too bad. Pagers are at museums now and flip phones, so I don't feel too bad about aging. So let me make sure I understand two things. What year was it?
1987.
1987. And then two, you physically put parts on, or were you, tell me about your job.
Well, in that particular program,
yes,
in the Titan IV, well, different disciplines. My role as an engineer was to be the integrator of the rocket with the different parts, to set up the meetings with the contractors to ensure that all the requirements of the rocket were built to compliance. How to integrate the payload, how to integrate the solid rocket motors, how to integrate the engines into the rocket. So I was pretty much like an overarching engineer. We had other officers in charge just on the engines, just on the solid rocket motors. My job was to be the one ensuring that the contractor and the Air Force were all in agreement. How was the rocket being built? And remember, that was 1987. The first flight was in 1988. So it was a fast-moving program.
Were all programs this quick?
Well, it all depends. It all depends on the need of the military. In that particular case, we had requirements to launch satellites into space that could not wait, so we had to move very, very quickly. And that was probably one of the highlights of my Air Force career. Work on something so big, literally, the rocket is big, and the payload fairing is exactly the same size as a space shuttle, so they would fit in an unmanned space shuttle, if may I say.
Do you want to tell us about the first time a missile you worked on was launched?
Well, interestingly enough, on the on the nuclear missiles, I'm glad none of them launched because they were nuclear missiles.
Yeah.
And then on the Titan 4 rocket, I was supposed to be the lead engineer on the second launch. But that's when I got orders. I got selected to go to the intermediate service school with the Army, as I mentioned to you earlier before the interview. And I had mixed feelings. You know, I really want to launch this rocket, but the Air Force is recognizing that I have a talent unique within the Air Force, which is the language and the culture. So my commander said, I think this is an opportunity that only comes once in a lifetime. We could always find another engineer to be the lead engineer for the Titan 4 second launch. Go to the joint school with the Army and more things will open for you. So that's exactly what happened. I ended up at Fort Benning, Georgia, studying with senior officers from Latin America and the U.S. Army, and there were only two Air Force officers in that school, a pilot and myself, a non-pilot. And that was a completely left turn or right turn in my career, which actually opened many more opportunities in the future.
So we jumped almost 10 years from when you entered the Air Force to the Titan. So I'd like to just backtrack a little and talk about what happened when you first joined. Your first duty station was in California.
Well, training for so many weeks to become a certified missile crew member. And there I went to F.E. Warren Air Force Base to do alerts on nuclear silos, in this case, the Minuteman III missile. That was pretty exciting, and one of the things is it was not physically challenging at all, heavily mentally challenged. You had to be on alert, you had to be not on alert, but be alert about any emergency that could happen at the national level. And you had to be awake, you had to follow procedures, and every so often do tests on the missile and the communication systems and so forth. That was pretty intense. There were a lot of lonely hours down on the ground, but it was a big job. It was a big job. And then after my 4 years in there, then I wanted to apply for the AFIT program, the Air Force Institute of Technology here at Wright-Patt. Well, guess what? I got accepted, and then I came to Wright-Patt for my first time to attend the Air Force Institute of Technology. And then once I got that degree, so what do you do with that? I mean, missiles, no, I'm an AFIT graduate. I ended up at Eglin Air Force Base in Florida doing flight testing of weapon systems on aircraft. So now I left the missiles behind me. Now I'm in aircraft. A phenomenal experience doing flight testing. That was a fun job, and to see things blow up and so forth. That, you know, the bombs that we were dropping on the range, that was really fun. Once I got done at Eglin, that's when I applied to go to Vandenberg in the Space Shuttle program, where I ended up in the Titan 4 Space Launch Vehicle office in Los Angeles. Then from Los Angeles, ended up with the Army for 1 year worth of training. And then the interesting part is, after receiving one of the awards from that school about some of the work that I did over there, so what do you do? What do you do with this guy? You know, this officer has missiles, aircraft, he's bilingual, bicultural. What do we do with him? I ended up in one exciting career at the Defense Intelligence Agency in Washington, D.C., working with foreign space launch systems. That was completely a surprise for me. You know, so the Air Force saw the need. This officer has multiple talents. Let's put him in the foreign arena, analyzing foreign space launch vehicles. And that was exciting. That was exciting. That's when we had the Gulf War. And there's some things I did over there with satellites. There was one study called the foreign exploitation of GPS. That's as far as I could go. It was an exciting project that I was the lead, not only for the DIA, but for the Department of Defense. And my report ended up at the White House and all that. And many changes happened in support of the warfighter during the Gulf War. So it's interesting how the career took some turns that always put me in a position to make a huge contribution. So what do you do after the Defense Intelligence Agency? You know, I made Lieutenant Colonel out of that. So what do you do? Well, Wright Pat again. It was 1 year in the Inspector General's office, inspecting the acquisition system and so forth throughout the command. I learned a great deal about Air Force Materiel Command. It was an amazing experience. And then I get a call someday from this friend of mine. Hey, they're looking for a congressional liaison here at the headquarters. The general wants to interview you. So, okay, that's something different, congressional stuff. Okay, I ended up as a congressional liaison officer for the 4-star here at the headquarters. Phenomenal experience. Got to meet a lot of the congressional delegation from Ohio. Ended up making a couple trips to Washington, D.C. So you can see how quickly my brain and my experience is expanding exponentially. And then it was time to get another assignment. So what do you do with all this experience? I saw, and by then all the jobs in the Air Force were actually advertised. So this almost like a job hunting or a job posting system, may I say. And I see this job posted, assistant to the executive officer of U.S. Southern Command in Miami, Florida. Well, it was actually in Panama, but they were moving to Miami. Requirements: an Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, got that, and a graduate of the U.S. School of the Americas at Fort Benning, the one I've been to. He said, no, they have somebody pre-selected. So I said, okay, I'll apply. And I did apply. And a week later, get this call from Panama. Hey, Lieutenant Colonel Rodriguez, your resume is pretty impressive. You know, the Admiral would like to interview you. And I said, put him on the phone. He said, you don't understand. He wants to fly you over here. Being an engineer, was trying to be efficient. No. They sent me a fun site to fly from Dayton, Ohio to Panama to interview for the job. And I got it. So I ended up meeting with the crew, moving the headquarters, U.S. Southern Command, and I met them in Miami to do the transition and all that. After 1 year working with a 4-star general Marine Corps and Navy admirals, I got into the joint arena and I got joint qualified. And all of a sudden, after 1 year doing the exec kind of job, then I ended up working with resources, doing now with money and congressional issues again. So there's a pattern or lack thereof and so forth. So what do I do after this? You know, I made colonel out of that job. And then the Marine Corps general said, Rodriguez, you'll be perfect to be the military group commander in Chile. That'll be a great job. I think we'll be going back to the Latin America. But the general in charge of AFMC at the time said, no. He's been with you for 3 years. He's coming back to Wright Pat. And I ended up working warfighter readiness issues from an acquisition and testing to be rapidly deployed to the field. What's interesting, going back to U.S. Southern Command, there were a couple things that happened between two Latin countries that were going at each other because the buoys demarcating the two countries were moved by a storm. And they say, Rodriguez, you know Spanish and all that, could you go work that? And knowing about space systems in the States, you know what, why don't we just, instead of going at each other, why don't we reposition the buoys based on the current location from a GPS satellite perspective? We avoided a major conflict in Latin America because I became more of a military diplomat, if that thing exists. So that was another claim to fame. While doing all that and coming back to Wright Pat, I was heavily involved with a system of cooperation among the American Air Forces. All the way from Canada to Chile, the Air Forces meet to work issues are in common and so forth. So I was the secretary for the Logistics Committee, working with the Air Forces of the Americas in issues that were common. The main thing there is that as a colonel, I got a call from the Pentagon. Hey, listen, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force wants to meet with you to see what is this conference all about. So here I am, a colonel from the island of Puerto Rico, a beach boy, may I say, growing up, not a pilot, just an engineer and a good one back then. It just happens that I ended up meeting with the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and I was sitting right next to him during the conference, doing the translation of that during the conference. Another claim to fame. It was actually amazing that I was able to do that. And then back at Wright Pad from the headquarters, I ended up at the Air Force Security Assistance Center, working with international officers who are actually purchasing aerospace equipment from the Air Force. And that was an amazing engagement with the international arena. So as you could see, my career was kind of unique. And then in 2004, I decided to retire. They made me an offer. Hey, we need you back in Los Angeles, another rocket program and so forth. By then, my wife was working at the base, and my daughter was going to Wright State University, as a matter of fact. My son was actually in a good parochial school. And then at that point, going back to the memories of my mom, I said, I think I need to be a little more caring about my family. And I ended up retiring so that my wife could move up in her career. And that was pretty much it. There's other stories that we could share, but right now, I mean, if I have to do it all over again, I'll do it exactly the same way. It was a phenomenal adventure. One of the operations that I did get engaged was actually the Restore Hope, when we gave support, humanitarian support to Somalia. That ended up in a shooting match. You know the movie Black Hawk Down? I was actually on this side of the operational headquarters, Central Command, working their intercell, some satellite technology that we had available from DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency. I got deployed, but I didn't go to the field to Somalia. I ended up doing that out of the headquarters in Central Command in Tampa, Florida. But that was actually the right place for me to be because the technology was all centered through my team and then disseminated through the field. That was amazing, working for an Army general back to the Joint Command. And that was a reward. I just felt really comfortable that although I was a little ways, my role as an engineer, as a technical advisor to the generals, I was at the right place at the right time. So that was another operation that I felt like, wow, my buddies out there, they're dodging bullets from over here and providing the information they need to be successful in the field. So that was another claim to fame. So serving in the military, you don't have to be always in the front. It doesn't matter where you are, as long as you understand what your mission is and what your role is in the mission at hand. We could all contribute, and we all can fight and win. No, it's a little long-winded, but hopefully that gives you a strong and pretty broad perspective of what my career was all about.
It does. I don't feel like we missed a thing. I do have some more personalized questions. So you married your wife in 1987. Where'd you meet her?
Actually, she's from Puerto Rico, but we met in Florida when I was stationed at England. We never met. She's about 10 years younger than I am, but we had a Hispanic club on base, which I happened to lead. And the secretary happened to be from Puerto Rico. She was married to a GI on base. She said, I'd like you to meet my sister. She's my little sister. She's coming in for vacation. So I thought she was going to be, a young kid, say hello. When in fact, she was a really nice 22, 23-year-old woman. And I said, wow, this really hit home. And very nice lady. And we've been married for 32 years plus. And that was, she hit, the arrow came straight to my heart, may I say.
Now you said a Latin club. What do you mean?
At the base, in some bases through MWR, morale and recreation programs at the base, at that time, Eglin Air Force Base had a club, you know, like an African American club and so forth. So we had the Hispanic club. It's just almost similar to what Wright State is doing with different groups. It's just to enhance the culture and to help integrate the Latino culture into the mainstream American culture. So we did a lot of activities through not only Hispanic Month, but throughout the year to help fellow Hispanics come into Eglin, make them feel more comfortable and what have you. And I happened to be the president of that club at that time. That was a lot of fun.
So, what did you do in your spare time before meeting your wife in the military?
Well, what's interesting, I always enjoy academics, you know, after going through AFED, then I ended up at Eglin. I ended up finishing my senior service school requirements and also another master's degree in systems analysis, a lot of heavy math. So I did that. I ran the Hispanic club. And I enjoy, you know, playing softball with a unit team and some dancing. And I used to dance quite a bit when I was younger and slimmer and better looking. Just kidding. But anyway, that was a lot of fun because it gave me an opportunity to engage with the people as well as the community involvement with the less fortunate. I've always done that. Either, you know, food baskets and what have you to bring to the needy people around the base. And that's always something I enjoy doing.
Wonderful. Your two children, how did they feel about the moving and Dad being so popular and special? And
Well, Giselle, who was born in California, she ended up being the one moving the most. Gabriel, there's 8 years difference. He was born here in Ohio in one of my stops in Ohio, and the second stops, and then we came back. So he didn't move that often. But Giselle, you know, she had to get adjusted, and one of the things that I believe was the biggest challenge for both of them, believe it or not, it doesn't mean to be on the dark side of my story, but the school bullying was a big deal. And that's something that I try to explain to my daughter. Don't pay attention to those folks, you know, you're as American as anybody else. And they will say statements that were kind of derogatory. And she always come home crying. Why are they saying that? Why are they saying that I'm from that country? And in fact, I was born here. There was my son also went through that. Those were challenges that we had to overcome. But other than that, academically, they both did well in school and they adjusted. And the military gave us, because they also have friends in the military, they were more in tune with diversity and inclusion than folks from the local community who have not had that opportunity to meet people from other cultures and other parts of the world, even from within the United States, for that matter. So I think that they were a step ahead on the diversity part of it than the local kids, and they adapted. They say, you know, like Daddy adapts in the military. You know, we got to move. They adapted and they excelled. They say that, oh, that's just something that happens. We just got to keep on moving.
you said that you became closer with your mother after you went away to the military. Can you expand more on that? How did you stay in touch with her? How did you become closer?
Well, one of the things that not only financially, because I knew that her health was not necessarily the best. So from day one, you know, I started sending money back home, and not necessarily from a financial perspective, but I did it more as a psychological perspective. For example, every time my mom and my dad would open that green check from the government, in my mind, I always thought when they opened the check, it was not about the amount. What went through my mind that I thought they thought, and in fact, I verified that is, our son Rafi has not forgotten about us. That was a way to communicate, Mom and Dad, I'm here for you. This is just a token. Should you use it for the best need you may have, but I'll be there for you. And then they continue, you know, phone calls and visits to the island and so forth. And that was very valuable for me there to go to the island as often as I could and bring him over here to the States to visit as well. In the later years that she got sick to the point that she couldn't travel anymore. And then my twin brother ended up going back to Puerto Rico to take care of both of them in their golden years. But I did it. Again, the check it was not about the money. It was just the message. You could have done it electronically, but the physical check, every time they got it, is Rafi has not forgotten about us. And to me, that was a strong message. And one day I asked Mom, what do you feel when you receive the check? Well, you're there for us. So she validated my intent.
Okay. You, I assume, made a lot of friends and comrades and associates. Is there any person or personnel that sticks out in your mind during any particular space of?
Well, the person that comes to mind always is my mentor, Rafael Ramos, retired Colonel, U.S. Air Force. He was my mentor in ROTC, and all throughout my career, he was always there for me to ensure that I did the right thing and did things on time and so forth. He recently passed away, and he was the most influential person in my life. And that was the hallmark of what a mentor is do something for the benefit of a fellow human being without ever asking anything in return. That was him. I have friends from the different squadron or units that I attended, that I was assigned to, but that individual was the most influential person in my life. And to this day, I will be eternally grateful.
So you sound like the type of person that would pay that forward and mentor others. Is that true?
Absolutely.
And how do you mentor others?
Well, first of all, when I meet not only here at the university but throughout the community, if there's anybody that needs help, I offer my time and to mentor them. And there's been a few that have come through, and to help them not only financially, because that's what I do right now, but also in life. Coaching them through the military. The military is a tough career in the sense that you're separated from your family and you constant travel, and it may put strain in the marriage and your relationship with your children, especially if you're deployed for a long time and so forth. So I'm always available, and there's been quite a few folks that had followed my advice, and every so often, hey, Rafi, I had a question, can you help me with this or what have you, and I'm always available. Especially if they're local. And also, I engage with veterans, not only from the mentoring perspective, but going back to the caring part that we started the conversation, the compassion. I'm very active in the community, especially through the United Way of Greater Dayton. I run a Rafi's Amigos golf outing every year. I've done it for 2 years. We're going to do it again in 2020 to raise funds, and every single penny that we raise is going to go to help my fellow veterans who fall in hard times and in need. I also do other things with the community, not to belabor the point, but I learned that from my mom and my dad, that a portion of what you earn should be shared with others for the benefit of them. And nothing else, it's not a handout, but a hand up. And I enjoy doing that in the community, veterans or the community at large.
Are you a part of any other, besides the one you started, any other veteran organizations?
Well, the Air Force Association is one, and also the military, what used to be called MOA, the Military Officers Association of America. Those are two military organizations, but I also engage with fellow military officers who retired, whom I know from my time on active duty. Air Camp USA. It's an organization that started here in Dayton, and it's a summer camp for kids and teachers to learn about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math through aeronautical principles. Homegrown in Dayton, so I'm pretty engaged with that. Some of my colleagues from the Air Force are there. So, yeah, and engage with the community. Many other aspects, like Kiwanis of Beaver Creek, I'm a founding member of that, and many other things that I do on behalf of those who fall in hard times.
Do you feel that caring and compassionate nature that you inherited from both of your parents, from your mother, the leadership from your father, do you feel like your children inherited that then from you?
I'm pretty sure they do, because not only do I see it on social media, but in many cases they come along. And I don't push them to come along. They just do it on their own, and then they do their own charity work, not only charity, but caring for others in their own way. I believe that you don't have to preach. They see it as an example. They see you doing it and say, that's something good, makes me feel warm inside. Why don't we do it? And they could do it on their own way. So yeah, they follow through.
In the way that your mother took you to see some of the clients that she worked with, over the years, were there opportunities for your children to be a little, kind of a part or included in the things that you were doing?
Well, they certainly have support the golf outing that I do for the veterans. They certainly engage in that. My son volunteered with United Way. Some of it was for credit here at Wright State University, but he's familiar with the organization. My daughter, she's engaged in different things, not only for individuals, but also for pets and so forth. So again, it doesn't matter how they express it, but the fact that they give part of their talent, part of the God-given talent for the benefit of others, that's the message I learned from my parents, and that's the message I promulgate forward.
What year did you retire?
2004.
You did say that. I was trying to do math and I couldn't do math that quick. What have you done since then for yourself? I'm assuming that you're way too special a guy to have had to seriously retire to sit on a lazy boy.
You must have talked to my wife. No, I think the word retirement, as a matter of fact, when I do lectures in the community, I make the comparison, going back to one of your original questions about adapting to the United States. I play with the language because the word retirement, if you look at it up, as a matter of fact, I challenge you to look at the Webster Dictionary. It has several definitions for the word retirement. One of them is the end of useful life. I don't particularly care for that definition, but in Spanish we used to use the word jubilación, come from jubilation, from jubilee, the end of a journey and the beginning of another. So when we talk about those kinds of topics, do you rather talk about end of useful life or jubilation? Let's talk about jubilation. That's a more happy, gets a smile on your face kind of topic. So I'm pretty engaged in the community, like I mentioned, in a lot of philanthropic work, also in my business, which I do a lot of coaching and mentoring for people in the community, my clients and what have you. And it's amazing, my involvement. And sometimes when I look at the things I do, so how do I get time to do all that? In a way, also staying somehow busy physically. But I get a lot of satisfaction from giving of myself to help others. It's one of the things where similar analogous to a workaholic. The more I give out to others or help others, the more you feel fulfilled as a fellow human being, and that's I guess I fall in that category.
So can you tell us about your business?
Yeah, well, when I having done all these aerospace and military functions, one thing that may catch you by surprise is, why did I become a financial planner? Why planning? It's still a lot of heavy math, still planning like I did planning in the military for a mission, what have you. But I mentioned that my mom got sick at the end. One thing that came to my mind is, how could I be so fortunate in having this great career, great family, financial stability? But my parents gave me so much, but unfortunately in their retirement, they fell in hard times, not only physically, medically, but also financially, because the cost of medication. So I use that misfortune to me, because I ended up going to Puerto Rico more often and helping more financially. And then my twin brother was helping them. I said, you know what can we do in our society to mitigate some of that? And then financial planning became a logical extension of my giving to others. How can I help younger people or not so young in making decisions that will put them in a better position to enjoy life as they desire to do so? So the advisory role that I did in the military for senior officers became more of an advisory role directly with people, with businesses. It's not about pushing anything, but to help them to see different options before they can make a decision, and to help them, guide them through that financial journey. It's been a rewarding career. It's a little harder than the military because finances are really close to people's hearts and people's chests, may I say. So you have to, let them understand that all I'm interested is in a trust-based relationship where I could be of help to you. Their decisions are ultimately the client's, not mine. But it's been very, very rewarding to be in a role using my God-given talent for the benefit of others in that fashion. It's been a blessing.
That is amazing, and thank you for what you do. So you didn't physically go to war, but you supported the war,
Yes.
the Gulf War, and probably OIF and OEF, or does that, enduring freedom and Iraqi freedom on some level, especially with your officer of such high-ranking status. How, if anything, well, let me say this first. I appreciate all people that sit down with us, first of all, so thank you so much for your time again today. And combat vets are special and unique in those that actually physically go over there. But it takes 10, for every one combat person, it takes 10 support people. And so we support people are very, very important. How would you say that those wartime experiences, because that's what it was, affected your life, if any?
Well, in several ways. The main way is I want to ensure that the folks in the pointy end of the spear understand that there's people like us supporting them in every way we can. And I think that made me realize that we need to do better communication in the military, understanding that the folks in the front, they're not there alone. They're there with their buddies who are the most important asset at the time, their buddies. But they should have an appreciation. I'm pretty sure they do, but I think that we need to communicate it strongly that there's 10 for every one of you, ensuring that what you do is the safest way and that you execute your mission in the most successful way. From the uniform that you wear, from the protecting gear, from the weapons that you have, from the radios that you have, from the satellites up in space to support your communication. There's a lot of people there supporting you and rooting for you so that the mission at hand is accomplished successfully. So I think just because you're in the back end doesn't mean you're not a warrior. We're all warriors. Some of them are in the front, some of them are in the back. And the folks in the front, I take off my hat. I mean, that's a tough job, regardless of the service. But they also need to understand there's some buddies, there's some colleagues, there's some fellow military members supporting what you do. And it doesn't matter the job at hand, from the cook to the medic to the logistician to the maintenance people. It doesn't matter. We all in this team together. Some of them have a role to be up front. But if that mechanic doesn't fix that aircraft the right way, that pilot is not going to have a successful flight and mission with that weapon system. I use the airplane as an example. It could be a tank, it could be a ship, it could be anything. So we all in this together, and those up front, I take off my hat, but those in the back, we also need to recognize that that warrior in the front depends on us. So we need to be the most professional, the sharpest we can, and ensure that the tools that we provide as warriors in the pointy end or the spear have everything they need to have, and they have the best opportunity to be successful in their mission. So as you can see, it goes both ways, and I appreciate that. And I learned that on my active duty, that when I was in the supporting the Desert Storm with my work in the intelligence committee, I knew that what I was doing was very, very important. The folks in the front may not have seen it, may never recognize who made the decision to do this. Well, there's a team of us in the back rooting for you and working on your behalf. So I like the team approach, because that's exactly how we fight and how we win.
That's so true. Okay. What are some life lessons that you have learned from your military service? And when I ask you that, I personally keep in mind you came into the military with so much, I want to say, humility and compassion and knowing so much. So this is, I guess, a front-loaded question and not so much a back-loaded question. beyond what your mother and father taught you, what did you learn from the military?
Well, the main thing is discipline. You know, there's a way to do things, and there's a way of not to do things. So, starting from as a lieutenant, you know, you learn the discipline and how to work with weapon systems. So that engraved with me. You got to do things and do it right. There's a checklist for a reason, to minimize errors or what have you. Also, how to set goals and set up a plan to achieve that goal. I was in a position that we had to acquire a weapon system at a certain deadline. So we had to stay focused on the mission at hand. We had to be disciplined. We had to meet deadlines, and you had to do all that in a team environment. I really never worked alone. There was always a team of fellow Americans working together to make that task at hand. So I would say the discipline was a big one, and the setting goals and having a plan to set the goal. And then once you achieve that goal, don't stop there. Set up the next goal, even higher if you can. How to multitask. That was a big deal in the military. You got to juggle a few balls at the same time, not only career-wise, but family and my family back home, and that was a challenge. But the military taught me a lot of things about life itself. How to take care of your fellow airman, soldier, Marine, and it doesn't matter. These are your buddies. You got to take care of them because you never know when they're going to take care of you. So that camaraderie, may I say, filled with compassion, was something that I learned very, very quickly. The compassion I brought in, but the camaraderie, you know, this person right next to you, you know, at the end of the day, you know, if you're dodging bullets, you depend on the person to your right and to your left to take care of you because you're going to do the same for them. That's a high value item that I brought in from the military. Of course, I was never in a bullet dodging environment, but everything I did, it was done as a team, and that's something I really, really enjoy. The camaraderie and the esprit de corps that doesn't always exist in the civilian life.
I would like to ask, can you give me one story, one glimpse, one little highlight of your just favorite military career memory? Like, this happened and it was the best day, the best part of my career. Just
Well, I already mentioned the Titan IV one, but there was another one when I was at the Defense Intelligence Agency, and we had this thing that we had to analyze, and not to get too detailed, but they said Rodriguez just came from the space office in Los Angeles. I think he'll be the ideal person. And my background was not in intelligence, it was in engineering. And they gave me a team of experts from the different intelligence agencies, from NSA, CIA, and the services intelligence organizations. We had to do this, and that was a major. It's okay, I'm leading these people that know much more about me, but I'm the leader of the team. So we did the analysis, we did the report, came back with my name on it and so forth. That ended up in the hands of many people in the Armed Services Committee. I was asked to go back and brief the leaders of that committee behind doors. And the moment that I knew that this was really big is when back at the Defense Intelligence Agency, I got a call. Major Rodriguez, there's a request from the White House for you to submit your report. Go down to the mailroom. That's when I knew this is big, big. And from there, I ended up in a speaker circle throughout the intelligence community about what we've done, what we found, and the results of the analysis and what have you. And that was when I said, you know what, that work that I did in conjunction with the experts in the field, it was all going through me, but I was not the expert, but I surrounded myself with the experts. It was probably the highlight of my career when you get a request from the White House. They want a copy of your report, send it over. I knew this was big. And that report never came to the light, didn't have to. It was sensitive, and I was very honored, very, very honored to have done that.
so, in truth and honesty, with what we do here, that was the highlight. But can you tell me about a day that wasn't so great?
A day that wasn't so great. Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one because, you know, with my passion, I did everything the way I could. There was one time when I was in a joint environment, a U.S. Southern Command, what I felt that there was a bit of disjunction in what's called the chain of command. We had the general, then we had the execs, and we had the deputy, and we had the staff. And I always ask, okay, who makes the final decision here? And so no, it doesn't. You have to respond to all of them. I know, but it's one final decision making. And I even did a flow chart, being an engineer, about the decision making process. And I said, this can get better. So it was pretty challenging to comply with requirements from different bosses, different leaders that require the same level of effort when in fact they all had different requirements. That was tough, and I would try never to put anybody in that position. You have to have real clear chain of command and clear direction who your supervisor is. When you have multiple supervisors and all that creates a bit of a challenge. And I remember one occasion where an invitation came in to attend a political event in Miami, and I asked the admiral, listen, no, I already told you I don't want to attend that event. You know, it's political. I don't want to go. So I go back to this other officer who was in charge of other activities, like the chief of staff, may I say. And he said, you need to bring this back to the admiral. I said, well, he already said, no, he doesn't understand. He needs to attend this event. And I'm thinking, I already got the answer. Why would you want me to go back again? Why don't you ask him? So I got a little test. No, you don't understand. That's part of your role. I said, okay. So that, you know, put me in a difficult position where I already knew the answer. And then I went back to the admiral, and he said, well, didn't I already tell you I'm not going? Yes, sir, got it. But he was not going to put the other officer in jeopardy, so he's not going to go. These are his initials. They said, sir, would you mind signing here that you don't want to go? Okay, it's for the record. I gave it back to the chief of staff. Like I told you, sir, he did not want to go. It was not an issue in itself, the event. It was the lack of clarity of chain of command. To me, that's critical. It doesn't matter. It happens in civilian life. It happens in the military. When the chain of command is not clear, that's a formula for miscommunication. There was another occasion that was a little uncomfortable. I was in Washington, the Defense Intelligence Agency, and this senior officer told me, Rafi, you know your stuff. You're an expert in this topic. And he said something, and I don't mean to offend anybody, but he said, oh, you have one strike against you. He said, well, sir, what is that? Oh, you speak with an accent. And I said, whoa, that's not good. So I took it upon myself and said, sir, with all due respect, can I share some information with you? My accent is my signature, and I, you know, try to speak as clear as I can, and I'm pretty articulate when I speak the language. But let me remind you that the best Secretary of State we ever had, his name is Henry Kissinger. He spoke with a very heavy German accent. Also, we had a president from the South, Jimmy Carter, who spoke with a Southern accent. I say, sir, with all due respect, right now, I feel myself more valuable to the Air Force because I can communicate with twice as many people. And I knew that I could have faced, you know, discharge from the military, but I had to stand my ground. I say, sir, with all due respect, the day you speak Spanish as well as I do English, I'll take that comment. In the meantime, I'm not going to accept that comment. I mean, I stood my ground. I may have been a little too forceful. The senior officer sat down, apologized. He said, well, sir, apology accepted. He understood my position from my diversity perspective, from you know, the underdog perspective, may I say. Some of us still face some of that. To the point that he became my strongest advocate, because I took. He may have been not as polite, but I felt like, my God, that's a shot across the bow. What is this? And I said, I'm not going to accept that. And I had the strength of spirit and fortitude to defend my position. And he apologized, and then he realized he had made a mistake, and I accepted it. And from there on, he recommended me to do that big project I shared with you that ended up in the White House, because he realized this is a true professional. He's not going to give in just because somebody makes. He recognized his comment was out of line. So what if I have an accent? You know, that's my signature. You know, I've been working on the Queen's English for over 40 years and getting better at it, but it's just the way the Spanish accent kicks in. And hopefully we could understand each other with my accent. So, and that was a tough situation because the first time I had to really defend my background as a fellow American, you know. Like I tell a lot of my friends, I'm as American as apple pie, Chevrolet, and a little salsa on the side.
Oh my.
So anyway, so those are the only two that I would say. Everything else was just, you know, take it with a grain of salt and keep on plugging.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. That was very touching, very uplifting. So I have a question. In what we do, we want to share and reach other people. For a young person, a young officer, a young enlisted person, because when I do these interviews, I hear a lot of people that say, I didn't want to do it anymore because there were so many people saying do this and so many people saying do that. What would you recommend they do when the chain of command isn't clear?
Well,
what advice?
The number one advice I give my military friends and colleagues, especially those who are still on active duty, regardless of the rank really has nothing to do with it. Actually, the younger, the lower the rank, the most important it becomes, is to get a mentor. And the mentor doesn't have to be in the chain of command. It could be another military member who is on another unit, but somebody that you like and you trust, and take that advice to the bank. Mentorship is something that sometimes we take lightly. It's not a 15-minute chit-chat before your performance report. It's a lifetime commitment to the benefit of a fellow human being without expecting anything in return. So mentorship, having a mentor to coach you, because you're going to get a lot of information from your own chain of command, and a mentor could always be a sounding board to ensure you're on the right track. You know, and the military is all about following orders and so forth, but having a mentor can help you identify what is the optimal way of accomplishing that order, because sometimes you have to prioritize. Okay, the commander asked me to do A, B, C, D, and E. There's nothing wrong asking the commander, sir, you asked me to do A, B, C, D, and E. Which one is higher priority for you, so I could work on that first? So it puts you on a resource of great importance. I want to do what's best for the unit, best for you at this time, but you gave me so many tasks. Which one is a higher priority? Hopefully, the person who gave you the order to, oh, okay, I understand, this one is no priority. If they say they're all top priority and one of them all down, then that leader, that supervisor, needs some coaching himself or herself, because not everything is a top priority. There's a hierarchical level of priorities, and we need to identify and help that young person, that young GI or a young officer, understand what goal setting and prioritization is all about. Not everything is 100% priority. If it was, it would be living in a highly chaotic world, and that's not how it works. So it helps not only the young professional or the young officer, the young enlisted, understand what prioritization is all about, but also what is really important here. And that's a pretty profound advice. Easier said than done, but I've done it. And I asked my senior officer, you asked me to do all these things. Which one is the one that could get you fired? I'm saying this in light. Oh, okay, do this one first. Okay, now I know which one is priority. I mean, I don't mean to be too light, but sometimes we get asked to do way too many things. Pretty sure you were in that situation at some point. But anyway.
Okay. That was such an amazing answer. Thank you so much. Is there anything you feel like we haven't discussed or that should be added to this interview?
Do you have another hour? No, I'm just kidding. I think I cover a lot of things that not only answer your question, but are deep in my belief system about what the military is, and how valuable it is for every young American to consider a military tour, if not one, two tours, to really understand what the American uh, um, psychic is all about. You know, who we are as people. It has nothing to do with color or creed. It has to do with one simple idea: freedom. And how do we feel about freedom? How do we defend it? How do we protect it? And I think that every young American should consider spending some time in the military, serving your country, so you could really get an appreciation what that really means. Defending our Constitution for a way of life. That's just not a phrase on a billboard. That's something that we live day in, day out. And like I shared with you earlier, to be part of the 1% protecting the other 99, it's a supreme privilege. And I think every young American should say, I want to be part of that 1%. To make our country still a great place to live, to work and raise our families and enjoy our community.
Maybe we can get that 1% a little higher.
I hope so too.
2 or 5. Katie, did you have any other questions?
No, when you were speaking about the experience where you defended your accent, I'm imagining that was probably a profound learning experience for your supervisor, or it was your supervisor that the interaction was with, because it's very possible that he's never had to consider another perspective. And so I'm just imagining for him that was a learning moment.
I'm pretty sure it was, and after he apologized, we became better. We understood each other better. He came to our home for dinner. We visited with him and his wife, and I think my life experiences coming from a Hispanic culture and then being thrown into the States and then working in the international arena, you get a real deep appreciation and again, compassion to some extent to the abilities of others and the shortfalls that they need to work on, but to be appreciative of their talents that they bring to the table. And I think that's, to me, it was a big lesson for me, but I'm pretty sure it was a big lesson for him because he was probably in a more narrow track of a career. My own experiences moved me around and so forth. When you're dealing with an officer from Egypt that was actually here, that actually happened, if I may share that story with you. He was one of those foreign liaison officers at Wright that was here because they were buying some equipment from the U.S. They also sent him here because his wife needed some surgery. And he was very in discontent with the apartment because the lady who rented the apartment to him did not understand him too well or had some issue with their cat that was, breaking the curtains or what have you. And I did a little study about that, and he said, Rodriguez, you go handle that. So I ended up talking to the lady in renting the apartment. Listen, you need to be understanding. The cat in the Egyptian culture is very, very important. And also it's a companion for the wife who's going through a surgery. And I ended up doing some research. I got a letter from the local doctor prescribing the cat as a health companion or helping the lady heal. And then I brought that in, and the fact that his English was broken, but I was very caring about him. He was a senior officer and his wife, and the 2 kids who actually went to Wright State. And he was so appreciative of that because the lady said, you know what, forget about, I now understand. They could stay in the apartment. The cat is fine. We don't need to declaw the cat or anything like that. And that foreign officer from Egypt, could have been any other country for that matter, so that one American, happened to be me, really took care of the situation and bridged the gap of knowledge of lack thereof and understanding. So I was able to brokerage a better relationship with one of our allies. And when that whole thing was, he was ready to go back to Egypt. So no, I'm leaving the United States. No, let me help you here. Again, the compassion. I mean, he was from a foreign country, not used to the American culture and all that. So I was able to intervene. And it was really rewarding when one day him and his wife came to our home while I was stationed at Wright Pat on base with a big thank you about what I've done for him and his wife. Imagine the impact in the international relations between the U.S. and Egypt. It could have been any other country for that matter. But I think I was very fortunate to be in a place where all those experiences in life, like you alluded to earlier about compassion, kicked in to make somebody else more comfortable in our country so he could have a better experience going back home, and his wife could get the surgery here at the base and enjoy their stay in the States for a couple of years. You know, those are things that the average person may not think about, but I did, because I, you know, being the underdog, you become in tune. Your brain and your mind and your soul get in tune to all those personal needs or spiritual needs. And I was able to be there, and I solved the problem, and I became, as the ambassador, as a cat ambassador in the unit. But anyway, that was on the funny side, but that was a big deal. I mean, this gentleman was ready to go home. He said, no, you can't go. Let me take care of that. Little things, simple things in life that really made a big difference.
And now every time he discusses anything involving the United States, he'll be coming from a perspective that's positive, reflecting on this experience, and that's a great
I sincerely
contribution
hope
you
so.
made to.
I sincerely hope so. And the kids graduated from Wright State, and every time he comes to the States to visit his two sons, and if I come across, it's like I saw you yesterday. It's a great encounter between an Egyptian general and Rafi Rodriguez, an American colonel. So it was something that made me feel warm, that I was able to help a fellow human being in this country who didn't understand all the ins and outs of the culture, and he was able to, okay, I can live here now. I mean, for a while. He was here for a couple of years.
That's really neat.
Well, last question. What messages would you like to leave for any future generations that will see or hear this interview?
Wow, I kind of alluded to that earlier about the encouraging every young American to consider serving in the military. Be part of that 1% that protects the other 99. What you will learn in the military, the camaraderie that you will build with people, with your buddies, you know, whether male or female, doesn't matter. Those relationships stick around for life. And what you learn in the military carries over very well into civilian life. It could actually help you cope with civilian life in many, many cases. It's an adventure to be in the military. It's a tough career, but being part of the 1% is very, very important. And if I had to do it all over again, I'll do it exactly the same way. It was I mean, sometimes doing what I do right now, sometimes I miss it, you know? I miss the camaraderie. I miss my friends from the military. I miss the mission. I miss donning the uniform, although I was much slimmer back then. But in the memories, when they go through my mind, it's all a happy thought. I did it proudly, and if I have to do it again, I'll do it exactly the same way. And I hope I could be some sort of a beacon for the younger generation. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as you serve. You know, it's something that stays with you for life. Nobody can ever take that rank from you, or that achievement, those medals from you. I mean, that your country appreciates that. Be part of that, and embrace it. Be part of it, and share it with others as well. I think I've said it all.
You've definitely given us a lot, and we really, really appreciate it. That concludes our interview with Jose Rafi Rodriguez. Thank you for your time today and for your military service.
Thank you for the opportunity to share that with you and the viewing audience as well.